Hello everybody, how are we? It's been a very long time since I did one of these socially distant story things. I think it's been a whole month since I last did this. So it was on my mind for the last few days as to maybe I should revisit this, have another go, and what should I read? What should I present and speak to you about? And I sat here randomly about an hour ago and I thought I'll just pick a book from my desk, and there's a pile out of shot here of books. Not all of them mine. There are some counselling books there as well, some rather useful counselling books. And I decided that I'd revisit Peace with you. If you haven't met Peace, Peace is... sounds really strange, but the Peace Novella series, a project that I was involved with about 3 years ago. There are 20 books in that series, 3 of which are mine, and one I will be talking to you about this evening. So a whole collection of authors from across the globe, from Canada, Australia, the States, have all come together to create this romance novella series centred on the fictional town of Peace, Montana in the US, and the brainchild of S.H. Pratt. And I had the privilege, the opportunity to be part of this project. Hi Billy, to be part of this project and to contribute a character. My character is called Devon Coultry, and you can pronounce that whichever way you want, but that's the way I pronounce it. So depending on how you read it, where you're from, it will mean different things to you. And so 3 years ago, the first book that I wrote in this particular project was this one, Retreating to Peace. And as I say, 3 years ago, that's where we met Devon. Devon was a hedge fund manager who lived in Rugby, who took a chance, stuck a pin in a map in his dad's study, and decided to travel off to the States. His heart was broken, he was a bit bruised, he wanted a new beginning. So this was where he started, and we see how he lands in the US, how he starts his life, but his past comes back and haunts him, and in one way or another bites his backside really. And we meet that person, and she's someone very special. And this is where I have to be very careful, because this is the one name of all the characters I can never pronounce. Her name is Aditi Rao, and she changed his life in more than one way. And we explore and we find out what happens in this. I remember writing this story and thinking, hold on a little bit, we need to think about what else there is to this man. He must have a story, he must have a life. And it felt unfinished, so of course, what did I do? I wrote the sequel. Well, I call it a sequel. It's not really a sequel. It's actually a series of short stories, seasonal short stories. In here, you've got a Christmas story. You've got a couple of Thanksgiving stories. There's also some Diwali stories in there. There's a Rakhi Day story in there that actually makes me cry. And there's a whole host of different things. There's even a story inspired by westerns. Yes, spaghetti westerns, as in Sergio Leone's, spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood. So there's lots of stories in there. The last story was a story that I wrote as a speculative story, not knowing quite how it would end. But it features something that happens and is powerful enough that it caused a lot of character development. And this character development, this potential, this change, was only going to go one way. It was going to lead to this, the last of the Devon Coultry saga. And I call it a saga because it is a story. It goes from start to finish. And never say never. You never know. He might come back again. There is a plan somewhere in amongst all of my notebooks for Devon to come back, but you never know. And so this is the conclusion of the Devon Coultry saga in the Peace Novella series. So across the 3 books, you see Devon's life and see all that he experiences, the people of not only his family, but also in Peace, the town, as well. I'm very fortunate that the fellow authors were so inspirational and had written characters that I could borrow and put into the stories. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a couple of pieces from this. Peace Betrayed was published earlier this year in January, and it was also launched in a local pub. It was launched at, hello Chris, how are you? It was launched at the Gunmaker's Arms in Birmingham in the middle of Storm Dennis, and it was a wonderful evening, and I cannot thank enough the people that were there that night to make it happen in the middle of this horrible squall. And we're standing there in a brewery at the Two Towers Brewery in town launching this. That wasn't the first time that Devon Poetry had been read in Birmingham. It was the second, but it was a good opportunity to read, to be amongst fellow authors. And I must thank Chris and Billy and also Martin Tracy as well for making that evening happen. Hi Chris, as well as Lee Benson, who was kind enough to read that night. So this evening, what I'm going to do is to read some part of Peace Betrayed to give you a bit of a flavour. Now, I'm going to need my beer mat. This is a very important beer mat. This is from the Gunmaker's Arms. And let's have a think. We'll have a read and a listen. And the first part involves Devon's grannies coming to the States. So he has two grandmas, Gloria and Thea. And they live in the Midlands. I think they live in Rugby, actually. So not really the Midlands. And they go visit him in the US. So you imagine these two ladies going off on a plane to the States, and this is where the story gets picked up. It didn't take long, but they got into Devon's Toyota and en route to Oakview. No sooner were the two grannies buckled up, they both fell asleep in the back. Devon got them home. Each granny was ensconced in her respective room. As they settled in, he prepared afternoon tea. Bang on 4, he called up the stairs. "Grannies," he yelled, "it's time for tea," and in the walled garden. He wandered up to make sure everything was just right for them. He passed through the kitchen to pick up 2 vintage cake stands that Aditi had found in Colorado. He took the table with Granny Gloria's china, just to make things special. In the walled garden, he set the cake stands down. He sat and he waited for the grannies to make their way down. It was 15 minutes before they appeared. "This looks lovely," Gloria beamed, her hands clasped together as she surveyed the afternoon tea. There was cake, sandwiches, teapots with cosies too. "All this cake, Devon, you'll trigger my diabetes." "Life's too short," retorted Daya, pulling out a chair. "My tea cosies!" She tugged at the one. Daya had knitted it and sent it over via special delivery. The two women cooed over the food as they stacked their plates. "I've forgotten how house-trained you are," Gloria chirruped as she poured tea. Then she nibbled at a sandwich. "You do make good one of these." "Still can't make chapatis, though." Daya raised an eyebrow at him. "Give 'em a bag of lentils. Those aren't too bad, actually." "Better than Aditi's," replied Devon, pouring his own tea. Compared to her, I'm a gold standard gourmet." Then he caught the glance that his grandmothers exchanged. "Why is she never here?" posed Daya, lifting her teacup with both hands. "Aditi spends all her time flying around, more than perhaps she's not settled," offered Gloria. "She works here, there, everywhere." "No, she shouldn't." Daya was no longer being polite. "She should be here and with him." She flicked a finger toward him. "What did you do?" Gloria was direct. "After all this time, after everything, did you scare the girl away? Trust you, a married man, acting like a bachelor." "What, me?" Devon blinked, dazed at being ambushed. "Why would I do anything?" he all but squeaked. "I did the right thing. Married the woman I love. Tried to set up a home and hearth here, grannies." "Didn't invite us, though," grumbled Daya, going to work on a piece of sponge cake. "That's a separate issue. You should be together, the pair of you." "It's complicated," he declared, blowing across his tea. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. This is home for both of us. Aditi will come home to roost. She always does. Eat up, grannies. It's all getting cold." Probably cold anyway. Sipping his tea, Devon hoped that would keep them quiet. They didn't need to know about how Aditi had betrayed him. Aditi I like, said Daya. I can understand her. She's been good to me. Carly, she shook her head a moment, was never my cup of tea. Always so distant. Gloria nodded as she spoke, as though she had somewhere else to be, somewhere better, as though we weren't good enough. The way she used to push and pull you, I can't say I liked her either. She never visited me, for one. Aditi does. Carly, well, she never gave me the time of day. Agreed. Di clinked her cup against Gloria's. You're right. You're absolutely right. Aditi's not perfect. Devon fiddled with a muffin case. I'm not saying Carly was. I refuse to speak ill of the dead, grannies. Going to speak ill of Aditi? Daya squinted in his direction. It's complicated, my left foot. Don't lie to us, boy. Once more, the two grannies eyeballed each other. They were a rather dynamic tag team. She doesn't clean up after herself. Devon knew he was squirming. This was altogether uncomfortable. I'm her husband, not the cleaner. Aditi will quite happily make a mess of everything. Sorting things out, coming clean, not really her forte. Both grannies groaned to sit back and retreat. Technically, he told the truth. In something of a sulk, Devon was quiet as tea continued. Gloria and Dad talked between themselves and enjoyed the spread, after which they both retired for a nap. It was dinner time before they both arose. Only there was a catch. Fine, I'll tell them. Devon huffed as he hung up the phone. Standing in his kitchen, he then launched the device across the worktop. Everything okay? Daya asked. She stood by the sink, watching zucchini. That's a courgette, or a form of translation. Aditi. Gloria was bang on the money as she chopped peppers. She's not coming, Devon muttered, putting his hands to a couple of brown onions. We can still have the dinner without her. Not that she liked ratatouille anyway. Once again, Daya and Gloria exchanged looks. Devon bit his tongue, stuck with clients. He didn't believe that for a minute. So something's happened, obviously, and Aditi has caused it, or has she? You have to have a look if she has. Well, it does say peace betrayed on the front. So there's been an event, a schism, between Devon and Aditi, who, by this point, is not just his girlfriend, not just a woman from his past, but she's actually his wife. And so something's happened that has, slightly, shaken, shattered certain things. And as the book goes on, we start to understand what happened, to what end. And of course, Devon, as we know, isn't entirely innocent in any of this. But things happen. The relationship is complicated, amongst other things. So what else could possibly happen and to Devon Coultry? Shall we have a look? He'd been out like a light, deep in a dreamless slumber. Devon didn't register the movement that came from his bed being invaded. Accustomed, as he was now, to having the cavernous space to himself, he used the whole space from the middle. He saw nothing wrong with being spread-eagled across the bed. Oi, move over. That immediately made him worry. Covers were pushed away to let in cold air. For all of 20 seconds, Devon wondered who was about to fall into his bed. Which woman? And more specifically, what did she want? All he wanted was to sleep. Devon had spent the whole day wrangling with his hooch baron empire. He was in no mood to play nice, regardless of whoever was about to slide in alongside him. Devon, it's me. As he coiled in close around him, sliding an elastic band from around her wrist, she pulled her dark locks into a ponytail. Aditi, your wife, and not the Spanish Armada. Stand down. This isn't an invasion. Could have fooled me, he said, making no effort to stifle a long yawn. Hello, how you doing? He asked, blinking to refocus. Did you remember that I exist? He rubbed his eyes as he asked. I didn't forget. Aditi ran a toe along his legs and swamped him completely. You make a lovely sleeping beauty. Her words were punctuated by splodgy kisses landing wherever she could reach. Flattery will get you everywhere. He closed his eyes, tilted his head back, and let his wife do whatever she wanted. "Sleep with me," he said, feeling the tug of the covers. In my arms, as though I was the only boy in the world. There was a murmur of disappointment. Aditi pouted, threw his pyjama bottoms out of the bed. Devon fixed her with a glare that could have passed for smoulder. Relenting, she settled back into his arms. There was closeness. The warmth of Aditi's body, each and every inch, buffered the truth. He wasn't the only boy in the world. Yet, for the next few hours, he held on to it. He held on to Aditi as though she was the only girl in the world. He knew better. Two could play at that game. In the morning, base instinct kicked in. With his arms empty, Devon awoke to fling out a limb towards where Aditi should have been. When she wasn't to be found, his heart leapt into his mouth. Had he dreamt it? Had he imagined it all? Had she really been there? Throwing back the covers, Devon was starting to question everything. "Aditi," he called out, listening for the slightest movement. He couldn't have dreamt it. Perhaps now was a good time to ditch the bourbon. That said, it had been weeks, maybe 2, since he had last downed anything significant. Cautiously, Devon swung his feet to the floor. The line that existed between reality and fantasy had become invisible, rather than just blurry. "Aditi Rao, are you here?" Devon yelled this time. He needed to know if he was going mad and to what extent. "Yes!" The reply was shrill, a little panicked. "In here! Come here a minute, would ya?" The bathroom. Aditi was in the bathroom. Getting to his feet, Devon ran in the direction of her voice. He wasn't going mad. Not yet, anyway. "Please don't drag me into your shower," he said, opening the door. There she was, sat upon the toilet. Half a dozen pregnancy tests were scattered across the floor. A 7th was in her hands. Aditi was staring at it intently, as though willing it to change. Devon held his breath as she looked up. His brows had gone up. He tried to lower them immediately. What he felt was anticipation. Dreaded anticipation. His stomach had flipped at least twice. That was not a good sign. False alarm. She half whispered the result. Her face was pale, accentuating the dark circles beneath her eyes. For now, all she carried was guilt. Devon let out a sigh of relief. His heart had been sat somewhat precariously in his mouth. Slowly, it descended back to its rightful place. He was rooted to the spot, with no clue as to what he was meant to do next. Something profound hung between them. Something so electric it was strained and painfully hard to grapple with. Next time, he couldn't think of anything else to say. He saw the colour slowly return to Aditi's face, a soft flush, as though she was thawing out. Walking into the bathroom, Devon felt the cold of the tiles below his feet. Lowering himself to his knees, he scooped up the tests to throw them into a swing-lidded garbage bin. Holding out his hand, he wanted the last one. It landed in his hand, a negative, and was launched into the garbage. Aditi's gaze was pinned upon him. She wore an expression of disbelief married to curiosity. Describes them both, really. "We should talk." Her eyes dipped away to the floor. "Stick the kettle on." Getting to his feet, Devon washed his hands. Aditi stepped forward from the toilet to do the same. He found his toothbrush, applied paste. He'd taken his time. Showered first, and then he went downstairs. He did exactly that 20 minutes later. When Devon got to the lounge, there was toast and tea on the coffee table. It was 11:30, and well beyond breakfast. There had been a lie-in, having spent the wee hours in the throes of pure passion. Aditi sat on the sofa, waiting. I'm half compelled to carry on, but I won't for now. So there you have it. 2 snippets from Peace Betrayed. I hope that has brought you some imagination. I hope that's been useful to you. I hope you've enjoyed the last, how long? 15, 20 minutes. But yeah, that was Devon Coultry and Peace Betrayed. So with that, I will leave you. Have a lovely Friday. Enjoy this bank holiday weekend here in Britain. No idea what the weather's going to be doing. It's a bank holiday in Britain, so, you know, it could be showers for all I know. So with that, I will bid you adieu. I hope you've enjoyed. I've hoped you've, you know, felt compelled to go get it in the most simplest sense. But I hope you appreciate it, and maybe I'll be back. Until then, look after yourselves, stay well, stay indoors, read books, stay safe. Bye-bye.